I'm very glad to welcome you on our corporate culture course. And today we have our first class, which is going to be in English as this course. So maybe this is the first experience for yourself to participate in such a webinar in English, because previously in our academy, we just posted such webinars on YouTube, but this is the first time we make it live. Great, so let's continue. What's in it for me? Because maybe some of you just thinking, do I need this course? Why should I learn something about corporate culture? With this course, you will learn the 8-step model for building a corporate culture. Learn how to describe the company culture, implement it, measure it, and train employees on it. Also build staff selection based on values and communicate the culture in the company on a regular basis. That's the idea of this course. So to give you all the necessary tools to manage company culture. This course has its own website. This is a link to the website. And the course itself is built based on 6 webinars. It's not so long, quite, I would say short, and it's very handful and has everything you need to manage corporate culture efficiently. Program of our first lesson is following. We will discuss if company culture could be created, the importance of culture in business, how culture emerges, and we will consider case study. We will talk about Netflix corporate culture, which is, I think, one of the famous. Okay, let me tell you about myself. My name is Mike Pritula. Maybe it's the first time we meet each other virtually, but here is a list of companies I worked with, and sometimes I build culture or just manage culture. Sometimes I had different roles, but I would say that my main culture activities were in Preply and Ideals. These 2 companies, Preply was a startup at that period. Ideals was quite mature company, but not so big. And I helped all these 2 companies to implement culture management. I would say they had some kind of culture, but they couldn't manage it. They would like to develop it and to improve it, to strengthen it. So my experience and my activities were around building these tools and helping company to manage the culture. In my work, I use best practices from different companies. Let's consider culture, right? If I want to do something in the company, if I want to implement some new tool or maybe some new function, maybe a procedure, I always research best practices to understand that what I do is best in class, to be sure that my approach is not old-fashioned, is not something very simple, I would say, like, or something outdated, right? But that approach I'm using is based on research, modern research, based on best practices, and etc. That's why I recommend you also to monitor these best practices. And as usual, this course, it has homework that will allow you to obtain our diploma. So you need to accomplish all of them, and you may receive this diploma. Diploma is published on the very modern platform, which is used by so many famous companies like Google, Harvard, Zendesk, Slack, and others. And on this platform, almost 1 million diplomas is published every month, which is good. So the culture is very popular, you know. From the very beginning, I started my work at HR. It was 2006. I read a lot about culture, and nowadays it's also very popular. When yesterday I prepared this webinar and I checked on different websites and different modern newspapers, electronic newspapers, I found so many mentions about company culture, like Harvard Business Review, Entrepreneur, Forbes, and so other many newspapers. They all talk about culture, and you can see all these articles are quite fresh. October, March, June, I don't remember this date, but it's a I would say it's quite hot topic because company understand that culture is very important. Now, culture is not just something that HR could manage or have to manage. It's a distinct feature for most of business. It's what sets business apart from the competition or competitors. Business can be copied, but culture is difficult. You know, so many Chinese companies, they just copy a lot of products or they do it by licensing, but culture is something that is very difficult to copy. If you have nothing to distinguish you from your competitors, the customer will choose by price. So this is a not good idea if you don't have price domination, right? If your price is not the lowest one. That's why culture is important. What or how? Companies win not because of what they offer, they win because of how they offer it. You know, this idea of Apple app stores, Apple products. Usually Apple products, they are not so, I would say, perfect. They are not so the best of the best. They're quite similar to Samsung, to Xiaomi, to so many other products. But how do they do it? Like their culture, their approach, their service, it's what distinguishes them from the competitors. So if you visit, for example, Apple store built by Apple company, it's quite different the store that is built by another company because it has specific design, specific staff working there, specific service, and usually you feel it. The same for so many business like Starbucks that I just put a picture here. Starbucks, actually coffee at Starbucks is quite, I would say, mediocre. Nothing special. Lots of people saying, for example, in Ukraine, lots of people saying that we actually don't need Starbucks in Ukraine, right? And we have so many good coffee shops in Ukraine, much better than Starbucks. And I agree with them, but Starbucks has its own culture and its own atmosphere that attracts customer. And when I visit Starbucks somewhere in different countries, not in Ukraine, I usually visit not just to drink the coffee. Coffee is quite simple. Actually, I can cook coffee at my home. I can brew coffee at my home with my coffee machine, which is quite good and with fresh coffee beans. But the atmosphere and some, I don't know, magic in the air is quite different in Starbucks than in very many other shops. So it's about what's the culture, right? Because culture is something that people have different opinion. What is it? The question if there is going to be a translation in Russian. Yes, we have this webinar in Russian, so if you require it, we will provide you with Russian translation. Or not in Ukrainian, actually, we can discuss it about Ukrainian as well, or other languages. So culture is about how employees work together, how they relate to their customers, and how they build relationship with partners. So culture is not about some ideas, which is very important as well, but rather about behavior. One of the famous researchers says that quality and price are the minimum requirements for joining the game. They are easy to copy. Business differentiation comes from employee behavior. This is called behavioral distinction. And yes, culture is about behavior. And if you want to build new behavior for your employees, you have to build the culture or to manage the culture. We will consider what's the difference between building and managing the culture. So probably one of the most famous companies within the strongest culture is Ritz-Carlton. It's a famous network of hotels. Actually, I haven't been there. Maybe some of you been. Just share your experience. I think it's not in Ukraine. I'm not sure if I ever seen it in Europe. I think they have some, but for me, I just haven't visited it. But it's very famous, Ritz-Carlton. and they rely very strongly on their culture. They even conduct masterclass on culture, and every company, every people can come and visit this masterclass. You also may see the presentation from their masterclass here by this link. And they know that even with a formula for success, they don't have the persistence and discipline to implement it themselves. That's why they don't hide their culture. They don't hide the information about their culture. So they are very open to other companies just to come and visit and learn from their culture. The same, for example, Disney, Zappos, and some other companies, they have similar approach. They build strong culture, and with this culture, they're going to win the market. Zappos, you may know the book, very popular, very famous, Delivering Happiness by Tony Hsieh. I would say that you probably know companies in your country that are strongly relied on culture. For example, in Ukraine, I would say, for example, Monobank is very popular, and it has very specific culture, right? Very customer-centric culture, because so many different reviews about them, so many different experience shared by people with this bank that distinguish this company from other banks. Ritz-Carlton, they call it gold standards. They don't actually call it our culture. They call it gold standards. And they say our gold standards are the foundation of Ritz-Carlton Hotel Company. They encompass the values and philosophies that guide and encompass us. And they divide their gold standards, which is culture, into those, I would say, tools, maybe, right? They have credo, motto, 3 stages of service values, 6 diamond, and the employee promise. Their credo is following. The Ritz-Carlton is a place where the genuine care and comfort of our guests is our highest mission. We pledge to provide the best service and facilities for our guests, who will always enjoy a warm, relaxed, yet refined ambience. The Ritz-Carlton experience enlivens the senses, instills well-being, and fulfills even the unexpressed wishes and needs of our guests. This is their credo. Then their motto: we are ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen. Actually, super simple, but so strong, because they don't call themselves we are waitress, room cleaners, and other other staff. They consider themselves not as service or service personnel. They consider themselves as people that serving to other people to people approach, not servants to people approach. Practice teamwork and lateral service to create a positive work environment. And this is a picture of their hotel, which is quite beautiful. 3 steps of service: a warm and sincere greeting. Use the guest's name, so they use guest name. No one ever heard a better word spoken than their own name. Anticipation and compliance with guests' needs. Room attendant sees the champagne is in a container with mostly melted ice and immediately returns with ice. Fond farewell. Give guests a warm goodbye and use their names. This is the 3 steps of their service. And now their service values. They call it following. I'm proud to be a Ritz-Carlton. I build strong relationships and create Ritz-Carlton guests for life. I am always responsive to the expressed and unexpressed wishes and needs of our guests. I am empowered to create unique, memorable, and personal experiences for our guests. I understand my role in achieving the key success factors, embracing community footprints, and creating the Ritz-Carlton mystic. I continuously seek opportunities to innovate and improve the Ritz-Carlton experience. I own and immediately resolve guests' problems. I create a work environment of teamwork and lateral service so that the needs of our guests and each other are met. I have the opportunity to continuously learn and grow. I am involved in the planning of the work that affects me. I am proud of my professional appearance language, and behavior. I protect the privacy and security of our guests, my fellow employees, and the company confidential information and assets. I am responsible for uncompromising levels of cleanliness and creating a safe and accident-free environment. This is their values. And they have some specific idea of 6 diamond, which is mystique, emotional commitment, and functionality. And they have their employee promise. At the Ritz-Carlton, our ladies and gentlemen are the most important resource in our service to our guests. By applying the principles of trust, honesty, respect, integrity, and dedication, we nurture and maximize talent for the benefit of every individual and company. The Ritz-Carlton fosters a work environment where diversity is valued, quality of life is enhanced, individual aspirations are realized, and the mystique of the Ritz-Carlton is strengthened. And this is a description of their culture. I think when you hear it or when you read it, you feel that this is something special. This is something specific, and it creates the atmosphere, special atmosphere of service, of excellence, of care. So for me, when I read this, I want to visit this hotel and I want to experience how to live in this hotel and how to receive their service. Unfortunately, again, I think we don't have it in Ukraine, for example, but if I have a chance to visit this hotel in the future, I would probably choose this hotel, not other hotels, right? They distinguish themselves by their employees, the only remaining opportunity in the marketplace, the most sustainable competitive advantage. And it also helps you to attract and retain employees. For younger employees, culture is very important. They want to see a sense of belonging, willing to make less money, but for a sense of unity with the company. So usually younger people, like graduates, they look for a company with very interesting purpose. So they can join to this purpose and they can make contribution in improving the world or improving something for people, right? And again, culture has effect on productivity. Just try to think about the overall productivity in your company on a scale from 0 to 10, where 0, people don't show up for work, and 10 show the highest results all the time. The most people say we have our productivity at the level of 6 or at the level of 7. So just think about the overall or average productivity of your employees, and please write in the chat what the rating of this productivity in your company. What's your assumption? What you think about it? Is it close to 10, maybe 7, maybe 5, maybe 3, maybe even 1? So if you can give me your answer, I would be very thankful. So please just write it in our chat. And as soon as you write it, I read it, but I will continue. So just think about the following. What if the grade would be +1 or even +2 thanks to the culture, right? There will be more results for the same costs, greater profitability, and culture is one of the strongest influences on productivity. That's why you have to think about the culture. It's like let's say something running in background that gives the productivity improvement for your company. And let's consider this example. I think most of you have heard about Gallup Q12 questionnaire. Just answer plus in the chat if you heard about this. And it contains 12 questions, but let's consider 8th question. The mission or purpose of my company makes me feel my job is important. As you can see, this question, number 8, is strongly connected to the company culture, because only if you understand the mission of the company, only if you see that this connection between your work and the mission, that's why in that case you can be engaged at your work. Again, this question, what it measures? Employees want to believe in what their employers are doing. This item measures the extent to which they do. It seeks to maximize individual and group contribution by addressing employees' values. Why we ask this question among all of 12 questions? When employees agree with this point, the connection between their personal mission and their company makes them want to do more for their company, more at their job. What is the business benefit of improving this particular question? Work groups built around the mission have 15 up to 30% lower employee turnover and 30 up to 50 fewer accidents. They also exhibit profitability that is 5 or up to 15% higher than their workplace peers. And how we can improve this point? By launching culture management and actively communicate it. That's why company culture is very important and has the influence over employee performance and company performance, of course. The environment in which we work has the highest impact on productivity. If you put people in a high performance environment, they will perform better. And the culture is something that creates this environment, that creates high performance environment for employees. Other culture financial results. Good culture, or maybe even great culture, could improve customer relationships. For example, Zappos is a company that has this experience, right? Because they describe that how they improve their customer experience and then they improve their financial results. Your experience with company employees just following instruction, won't you go back to this company? Actually, usually not, because you prefer those who not just follow instructions, but those who solve your problems. The brightest idea or the brightest example of this is banking service. When you call your bank, you don't want to hear instructions or standard answers. You want to hear your problem being solved. But usually you receive just the general answers. We can't do this, we can't do that. Go to the branch, visit our banking branch, and then we will probably help you. It's not something you want to hear, right? You don't want to be served this way. You want to hear just active talking, like a real conversation, and you want to hear that your problem is the first priority and that they try to solve your problem or your requirement. Where does it come from? This is a very interesting question, because so many companies, they have some kind of culture, but where does it come from, the culture? Culture, it is generally accepted set of values and principles that manifest themselves in people's daily behavior. And culture is not what the leader says or wants. It's about what people in the company say, how they think, how they behave, and appears best in actual behavior. Company with beautiful posters doesn't necessarily mean they have absolutely the same culture. The very famous example is Enron company. You may heard about scandal about Enron company. They had this great culture. They had 4 values in their culture: integrity, communication, respect, and excellence. And it had nothing to do with their real culture. When I was in San Jose, it was a conference, and there was a girl from Enron company, and she had a presentation how my boss went to jail. It was a very interesting presentation. And she talked about her boss from Enron that was jailed because of dishonesty, because of manipulation, because of disrespect to clients, to law, and like it was absolutely different person that the culture describes. So in this company, Enron, these 4 values were on walls and in meeting rooms, on the website, in the reception area, on the ceiling, on the floor, they had these values described, but with the behavior absolutely different. So culture is not about posters, it's not about website, it's not about some very beautiful words, but rather about behavior. And every group has a culture. Every company has it. As soon as you get there, you get a sense how friendly they are, how they smile, how they answer the phone, how they treat a stranger. So when you visit different companies, you experience their culture. If you are a person that visit different offices often, or sometimes you have this kind of activity, you will notice this difference. Because sometimes when I visited other companies as a guest, I saw the difference. Sometimes you come and you are warm welcomed, but sometimes you come and no one pay attention to you. Think of group of your friends. I think every person probably have their own group of friends in Telegram or maybe Viber or WhatsApp. There are general rules and regulations, what you can and cannot joke about, what you shouldn't talk about at all, and how newcomers are treated. So just think about these groups. Where do you post jokes? Where you discuss politics? Indecent pictures or strong expressions, right? So usually these groups, they have some rules. How it's shaping up? Your friends don't gather and describe the mission, vision, and values of this group. Culture in these groups arises naturally and suddenly, and that's why culture works. In each group, there are one or more people who are stronger than others personally, not physically, but personally. They are the leaders. They are the alpha male or alpha female. Based on their energy level, they have a disproportionate impact on others. They suggest where to go out to eat, what time. The rest of us just follow their suggestions. It's not necessarily about voice volume. It's about their energy, right? And I think when you consider your friends, you may remember this kind of friends. When you join a group or you want to join the group, you evaluate, even unconsciously, the norms of these groups to see if they will work for you, which was set by the leader actually. If they fit, you stay in the group, and these norms are reinforced over time. If they don't suit you, you leave the group, often unconsciously. So, for example, I have different experience being in the group of neighbors at the place where I live. Some of them I dislike at all, and I just exit. Some of them I like very much, and I would say I'm proud to be the part of this group. So the group is different, and it depends on on the person that set the rules. Usually, the strongest one, they become administrators, and then they dictate what to do or what you can't do in the group. So just remember, when did you last time leave the group and why? It could be Telegram, Viber, WhatsApp group, maybe Facebook group, maybe some other groups. Okay, every group has a period of trial and errors. It helped build a culture. You said a joke that made the group uncomfortable, and you learn not to repeat it again. But norms will change under the influence of strong people who have a disproportionate amount of influence. It happens in business too, in companies, I mean. If you don't purposely manage culture, similar things happen in your company. If you don't create the culture you want, it will be shaped by people who are personally stronger. It doesn't have to be executives. Usually it's not executives. If it's hardworking and efficient employees, it will be fine. But what if it's not? Sometimes people that we usually say toxic people, sometimes they set the rules, and that's a bad idea, right? So what if they are sarcastic, cynical, and lazy jerks? They will influence those around them and make them like themselves. They'll ruin your company. That's why you have to manage company culture. Culture so much for the effectiveness of the company. Are you willing to rely on a chance to shape it on its own? Of course not. You don't want to do that, right? Leaders must create the culture they want, not just live through the one that forms itself. And another question I recommend you to think about: how important is culture to your business? 1, it's not important at all, and 5 is critically important. So if you may answer, please answer in our chat. What's the importance of the culture for your company? One or two or three or four or five. Then think about following. Does your company has a strategic plan for this year or maybe next year? Objectives, priorities, maybe strategic initiatives? Does your company has a sales plan for the year and a plan for how to carry it out? Does your company have a financial budget for the year? Usually you say yes, yes, and yes, right? Because usually company has everything that I mentioned. Who has a document describing the management of culture? And usually not so many company have this kind of document. If not, if you don't have this document that is describing the management of culture, it's like running a company without goals, sales plans, or financial plan. It's a bad idea. It's like running a company in the storm, right? So why executives don't create a culture? Why usually we don't see culture management at the company? Sometimes it is seen as a soft problem and they prefer to talk about hard numbers. How do you measure culture, right? Sometimes it's seen as an HR issue, so CEO considers it's as not their responsibility, but it's sometimes more important even than finances. Culture is less controllable, easier to release new product than make people behave a certain way. They never thought to do the culture management. That's why they do what they thought to do, like marketing, finances, and other stuff. And it didn't occur to them. They just haven't think about it. Thought it was always created on its own, never saw methodologies for creating. That's why executives don't think about culture. And how should it be? We must purposefully create and manage a culture. And let's consider Netflix example. I think Netflix is so famous company, doesn't need the presentation about the company. And what they say about the experience with the culture, they recommend to focus on behavior, not values. Behavior first. Building a culture around values makes no sense, Patty McCord said. Define the desired behavior. One of Netflix's early desired behaviors was don't be an idiot. This meant we spent a lot of time talking about applying common sense. The second one was be a problem solver. We wanted people to take responsibility and be proactive. It's not about how people feel, it's about how they behave and how much that leads to business results. Detecting mismatches. When words don't match actions, you have a problem, and that's what's very often happens in the company. They have one set of words and absolutely different behavior. Management and HR need to work on common goals, such as building a customer-centric company, not just focusing HR on reducing turnover. Hiring those who know how to learn. Patty McCord said from Netflix that we hire those who know how to learn. Ask at the interview about an important mistake and what they learned from it. If they can't remember the mistake or can't tell you what they learned, don't hire them. And this is an example of how they implement culture in their management. So they hire based on values, right? Truth and candor. Companies need the ability to talk productively about difficult things. People need to find the courage to speak up, knowing that the listener will look them in the eye and hear what they have to say. They need to trust that company will seek a fair and principled outcome, not a defense of the power structure. So they have actually a lot of different tips for building the culture. The set of tips from Patty McCord. It took Netflix 10 years, just think about it, 10 years to achieve the culture described in their presentation, and they are still working on it. 90% of the culture pays attention to it. What you do every day and how you do it reflects your culture. So be a cultural anthropologist. Look at the stories, look at the rituals, the heroes and the bad guys. Look at what you see. If you don't like it, change it. Be careful, that's where you start. And on this course, we will consider this 8-step framework to describe and to manage company culture. We will start from defining the culture, so how to describe it, how to write down some kind of instructions, then how to ritualize it, how to practice your culture in the company, how to make it work, not just to be it on the posters or website. Then we will talk how to select people based on values, not just everyone, but only those who have culture match. Then we will talk how to integrate new hires into your culture during the onboarding period. We also will talk about how to communicate your culture, often again and again, because it's very important to remind about the culture. How to coach your culture to reinforce your culture, right? How to lead by example, and how to drive the culture through accountability, how to measure it, how to reward for it, and so many other stuff. Books that I could recommend you about the culture is The Culture Book, Culture by Design, and of course, Powerful from Patty McCord. These 3 books I highly recommend you to read about the culture. And homework, study the Netflix corporate culture presentation, describe 5 acceptable and desirable behavior in the company and 5 unacceptable and undesirable ones. I mean your company that you work in. Create a chat room on Telegram, Viber, WhatsApp, and take on the role of the alpha male or alpha female. Be a leader, set the rules there. Next time, on our next webinar, we will talk about the 8-step model that I showed you previously. So we will learn in details what does it mean, what the every step means, how to implement it, how to describe it. That's what we are going to talk on our next webinar. And then we will start from describing a company culture through desired behavior of employees. It is going to be on our 3rd webinar. Today we are finishing. Thank you for your attention. I think it was interesting for you and something, maybe new experience for you. So again, thank you and see you soon. Bye-bye. And I'm waiting for homework from those who are in our group. If you're not in our group, join us and learn about culture. That's all. See you soon. Bye-bye.